not least its armed forces. And the United Kingdom has a particular responsibility in our relations with Israel to hold Israel to the highest possible standards we should expect of any state that claims to be a democracy. Now, I'm all too aware that so many of you will have first-hand experience that those standards are met in the breach, in the shocking breach of the Fourth Geneva Convention, which is why this event is taking place in the first place, with Israel in continued illegal occupation of someone else's territory. That is an offence against the most fundamental laws of the international community that underpin how our international rules system works. And the grievous loss of Shireen to the world of journalists, and I'm proud to stand here today with colleagues in journalism holding governments and politicians and institutions to account. It is a very sad day, but as the Palestinian ambassador to London made clear, it is not a day we intend to go unaccounted for, and to find the legal restitution, the delivery of justice for Palestinians is now central to my work as a politician. It takes place outside the House of Commons, because trying to make a case for Palestine inside the House of Commons has now become an almost pointless exercise. And I want to give Palestinians a real route to be able to get some kind of justice by exercising the moral and legal authority of the wider Palestinian position. And through that moral and legal authority, I believe there then can be the way for Israel then to face up to its responsibilities and the shame of its actions that it is doing in its name. And holding Israel to account is a critical part of the work of the international community. It's a central part of the work of the centre I have founded with Tayyip Ali, and we will continue to do it on behalf of you all, and we will continue to do it on behalf of international journalists, whose case we are proud to present to the ICC following events in Gaza as 2 years ago. This is another wretched day in the history of journalism, a wretched day in the history of Israel and Palestine. And the sooner we can bring a conclusion to these awful, recurring tragedies that are scarring generations, the better. And that is what I will be dedicating some of the rest of my public life to.
Thank you. Next up, we have Mohammed Amin, Chair of the Arab Thinking Forum.
شكرا جزيلا الزملاء والزميلات الصحفيين والصحفيات المؤمنين بالحرية في بريطانيا وفي كل العالم. نحن اليوم في يوم حزين، يوم حزين. جئنا لنعبر عن حزننا، لنعبر عن تضامننا، عن تنديدنا، عن مطالبتنا بالعدالة لروح الشهيدة الراحلة شيرين أبو عاقلة. إسرائيل عندما وجهت بندقيتها إلى شيرين لم توجهها إلى شيرين، بل وجهت إلى كل واحد فينا، وجهتها إلى كل صحفي وصحفية، لأنها تدرك بأنها حربها الحقيقية مع الحقيقة. ونحن كصحفيين وصحفيات وكمؤمنين بالحرية علينا أن نواصل هذا النضال. استهداف إسرائيل لشيرين لم يكن عبثيا، كان استهدافا محددا وواضحا، ومنذ 74 عاما وإسرائيل تواصل محاولات إخفاء الحقيقة بأن هناك جريمة ارتكبت ومنع للفلسطينيين من التحرر ومن إقامة دولتهم. هناك إصرار إسرائيلي على كتم هذه الحقيقة وعلى منع الصورة من الوصول، لكن كاميرات الصحفيين والصحفيات في 2022 تنقل على الهواء مباشرة. جريمة حرب مكتملة الأركان، ولا يوجد أحد يناقشني وأنا لست قانونيا. هذه جريمة ارتكبت على الهواء مباشرة، العنوان البارز فيها هو الإفلات من العدالة، وهذا الذي جئنا اليوم لنقول أننا نريد العدالة لروح الشهيدة الراحلة شيرين أبو عاقلة. ربما لم التقيها مرة أو اثنتين، لكن من 25 عاما كانت جزءا من تكويني كفلسطيني، كانت جزءا من تكويني كصحفي، كانت زادا يوميا على الشاشات لنعرف ما الذي يجري في فلسطين وما الذي تقوم به قوات احتلال فلسطين. كانت حاضرة في بيوتنا جميعا، شيرين كانت واحدة منا جميعا. تخرجت شيرين من ذات الجامعة تخرجت منها في اليرموك في الأردن، ولكنها ذهبت إلى ميدان العمل هناك ودفعت ثمن حياتها، وهو طريق واحد، فكل فلسطيني وكل صحفي هو مشروع. مشروع شهادة في مواجهة هذا العدوان المستمر. نحن هنا لنقول من لندن لكل العالم أننا نريد عدالة ونريد تحقيق ونريد أن تنتهي هذه الجرائم وأن ينتهي العنوان البارز وهو الإفلات من العقاب. سريعا I would like to speak in English to brief what I had said. Shireen was shot by Israeli soldiers while she was covering and doing her job as a journalist. Shireen was not holding a gun. Shireen was not holding a weapon, just a camera. But Israel and Israeli army killed her just because they want to hide the truth. Israeli state are hiding the truth and trying to kill the witness. Yesterday, they killed Shireen, but they will never kill the truth about the occupation. They will never kill the truth about the crime and the right of the freedom for the Palestinian people. It's true that they killed Shireen, but they will never kill Shireen's soul. It's true that they killed Shireen, but they will never kill Shireen's soul, and they will never hiding the crime, and they will push together and united together and fighting together to take Israel to international court. We should all fight and unite to take Israel to the international court because they have been treating us as if we are not a human. And I will tell you, this is not the way Palestinians should be treated. No one should be treated this way. Finally, I will finish with one word. Journalism is not a crime. Occupation is the crime. Journalism is not a crime. Occupation is the crime. Journalism is not a crime. Occupation is the crime. Thank you very much.
Hi everyone. I know everyone's very angry here today and very upset. We've chosen to meet outside the BBC because the BBC is complicit. And we all know how the BBC is complicit and the media is complicit in covering up what's been happening in Palestine for the past 60, 70, 80, 100 years. And why Shireen was so special to us, why she felt like a member of our own family, was because she was brave and she spoke the truth. And she felt like a member of our family because she was in our homes, at breakfast, at dinner, speaking the truth about the voices of Palestinians and what's happening on the ground when no one else would. So when we're gathered here today, we're calling not just to remember her extraordinary life, we're also saying no justice, no peace. No justice! No peace! No justice! No peace! No justice! No peace! No justice! No peace! There's, of course, Shireen is a long list of journalists killed by the Israeli occupation, murdered purposefully by the Israeli occupation. There's a list of at least 55 people since 2000 who've been killed.
watching our brightest be murdered. I'm tired of watching our hope be murdered. I'm tired of watching free speech be shut down. We all knew that we would show up here, but I guess the question is what we do next and where we take this fire, this pain, the silencing from today. Does any other woman want to speak?
Hi, I worked with Ali Samudi and I knew Shaheen. Sure. And I guess I just want to say solidarity with Palestine, who lost one of their talented frontline voices. Solidarity with the family of Shireen Abu Akleh, who lost a loved one. Everyday life is routine. Shaheen's everyday life was covering everyday violence of military occupation. The house demolitions in East Jerusalem, the incursions into rural villages, settler violence. There was no reason for the Israeli army to fear her. She was known. She was a public face. Ali Samudi is known to the Israelis. They know his work as a journalist. He was featured in numerous documentaries and TV broadcasts. I have worked as a journalist in the West Bank, and I know the extent of Israeli security surveillance. The army would know who was there and the press teams that were there. Unfortunately, this is not the first time Palestinian journalists have been killed doing their job. Journalists are shot and killed routinely. In 2002, covering the conflict, Ali Samudi was blown into the air by munitions from an Israeli tank. 5 years later, Ali walked me through where he was blown up. Ali somehow survived that day and somehow survived on May the 11th, but Shaheen was killed in the only unprotected part of her, in her neck, by a sniper. I'm the same age as Shireen, and unlike Shireen, I did not grow up through the extreme violence of military occupation. At 18 in 1987, in the first Intifada, Shireen witnessed her school friends being maimed by Israeli forces in the broken bones policies, targeting and maiming and paralyzing Palestinian youths to deter protest against Israeli military occupation. In the second Intifada in 2002, Shireen covered the incursions into the West Bank that destroyed Palestinian cities. I interviewed journalists, both Israeli and Palestinian, reporting on military occupation of the West Bank. Israeli journalists all said they had good working relations with their Palestinian colleagues who took care of them in the occupied Palestinian territories and kept them safe. Israeli journalists must step up and support their Palestinian journalist colleagues. They must lead the fight for justice on the Israeli side. As Palestinians have already expressed, there will be no justice for Shireen if the investigation is led by the Israeli state. Israeli journalists must shame their government for this brutal killing. Shireen's voice will not be silenced, and today we call on journalists everywhere to stand in solidarity with Shireen. We call on Israeli journalists to stand in solidarity with their colleague who was murdered by their fellow citizens. We call for an end of Israeli military occupation, which blights the lives of Palestinians. Shireen's voice lives on.
Thank you very much. I'm going to read the names of the 55 Palestinian, the journalists who've been killed since 2000. In the last 20 years, Israel has killed 55 Palestinian journalists in Gaza, in the West Bank, in Jerusalem, in the occupied Palestine. We are here to remember these heroes and to tell the BBC and to tell the British government you have to act to stop the violence against the Palestinian journalists. So we have Shireen Abu Aqli, Jenin, Ahmed Abu Hussein, Gaza, Abdullah Murtaja, Gaza, علي شهدة أبو عفش، لاهيا، حمادة مقاط، غزة، شادي عياد، حي الزيتون، عبد الله خليل فحجان، رفح، محمد ظاهر، الشجاعية، محمد الديري، الشجاعية، رامي ريان، الشجاعية، سامح العريان، الشجاعية، عاهد زقوت، غزة، عزة ظهير، رفح، بهاء الدين الغريب، رفح، عبد الرحمن أبو هين، الشجاعية، خالد حمد، الشجاعية، نجلاء الحاج، مخيم خان يونس، حامد شهاب، غزة، محمد أبو عيشي، دير البلح، محمد الكومي، غزة، حسام سلامة، غزة، علاء مرتجى، غزة، إيهاب الوحيدي، غزة، باسل فرج، غزة، عمر السيلاوي، بيت لاهيا، فضل شناعة، جحر الدين، حسن شقورة، بيت لاهيا، مازن الطميزي، العراق، محمد حليمة، مخيم بلاطة، خليل السبن، غزة، مازن دعنا، بغداد، نزيه دروزة، نابلس، فادي علاونة، عصموط، عصام التلاوي، رام الله، عماد زهرة، جنين، أمجد العلماوي، الخليل، جمال الهنولة، رام الله، أحمد نعمان، بيت لحم، محمد البيشاوي، نابلس، عثمان القطناوي، نابلس، عزيز التنح، بيت لحم، هاني عابد، خان يونس، حسن الفقيه، القدس، حنا مقبل، نقوسيا. عثمان مخيم برج البراجنة. Thank you.
Hi guys, my name is Dean. My mom was Shireen's best friend, and I grew up with Shireen on screen and at home as well. We're gonna do the following: 1 minute of silence for Shireen, and then we will chant in English and in Arabic as they have been chanting on the ground in Jerusalem, in Jenin, in Ramallah, and all cities of Palestine, which Shireen covered during her time as a journalist. And she is gone too soon. So please, a moment of silence. Okay, thank you, everyone, and thank you for showing up. We will start with Free, Free Palestine!
Free, Free Palestine!
Free, Free Palestine!
Free, Free Palestine!
No justice, no peace!
No justice, no peace!
No justice, peace! I say no justice, you say no peace. No justice,
no peace!
No justice,
no peace!
No justice,
no peace!
And next we will say Shireen was a journalist killed by a terrorist. Shireen was a journalist
killed by a terrorist.
Shireen was a journalist
killed by a terrorist.
Shireen was a journalist
killed by a terrorist.
So, for those of you who speak Arabic, I'll chant and you follow. شكرا شكرا يا شيرين
شكرا شكرا يا شيرين
وتحية من فلسطين
تحية من فلسطين
ويا شهيد ارتاح ارتاح
يا شهيد ارتاح ارتاح
ومن فلسطين الآبية شيرين شمعة مضوية
من فلسطين الآبية شيرين شمعة مضوية
يا جماهير انضموا إلينا
يا جماهير انضموا إلينا
دم شيرين غالي علينا.
ده شيرين غالي علينا.
يا جماهير انضموا انضموا.
يا جماهير انضموا انضموا.
هذا الشهيد ضحى بدمه.
هذا الشهيد ضحى بدمه.
يا جماهير انضموا إلينا.
يا جماهير انضموا إلينا.
فدائية وكل الجماهير.
فدائية وكل الجماهير.
ولا تحريرك فلسطين.
لا تحرير فلسطين.
Everyone, we gather today to honor the memory of Shireen Abu Akleh and to honor her dedicated spirit to standing up to her people, to our people, in their 74th year of the Nakba, of the ongoing Nakba, and Nakba al-Mustamirra, to struggle for freedom and for unity in our homeland. Shireen's friend and colleague Christine recalled their time together, reminding us that she was not just a journalist, but a warrior in her own regard. We would meet for hours in the field. We would be arrested together. We were wounded together. Shireen was a message throughout all her journalistic life, and even in her martyrdom, she is a message. Shireen Abu Akleh was a household name in Palestine and across the Arab world. But it was only until yesterday that I knew the name Shireen Abu Akleh. Before that, I knew her as Shireen Al Jazeera Palestine. A few years ago, Shireen was asked in an interview, "Why did you become a journalist?" This is what she said. "I will never forget the extent of the destruction or the sense of how close death was at times. We could not see our homes. We would be carrying our cameras, moving through military checkpoints and rough roads. We would sleep in hospitals or in the homes of people we did not know. Regardless of all the dangers, we insisted on continuing our work. In these difficult moments, I won over fear. I chose journalism to be close to the people. It might not be easy to change the reality, but at least I was able to bring their voice to the world. I am Shireen Abu Akleh, and today we are all Shireen Abu Akleh." Khalid al-Jarrah, a Palestinian leader imprisoned in an Israeli cell, said that Shireen was the first person she saw at her court hearings. "Shireen was always my voice from the prison cells," she said. She dedicated her life to bringing the voice of her people to the world as they continued to fight for the right to live in their homes and harvest their beloved olive trees. But she knew this commitment was not without risks. 5 years ago, an interviewer asked Shireen if she was afraid of being shot at while reporting. Shireen replied, "Of course I get scared, but in a specific moment, you forget that fear." She knew that a day like yesterday would eventually come. Yesterday morning, in the early hours of dawn, soldiers bearing the Israeli flag on their uniforms stormed the Jenin refugee camp as part of the regular crackdowns and arrest campaigns that have become all too common a sight under apartheid. At 6:13 a.m., Shireen sent a message to Al Jazeera's Ramallah bureau, writing, "Occupation forces storm Jenin and besiege a house in the Jabariyat neighborhood. On my way there, I will bring you news as soon as the picture becomes clear." Little did her colleagues know that that would be her last message. The soldiers surrounded the home of a man named Abdullah, who they killed 2 months ago to arrest his brother. Knowing the risks, the journalists all wore bulletproof vests and helmets with one massive word written in bold: "Press." I'll now describe what happened next in the words of Shireen's colleague Shada, another journalist who was on the scene. Shireen Abu Aqla arrived with her crew to join us. Here was the journalist whose reports I grew up imitating, from voice tone to hand gestures. And I dreamt of doing what she was always so good at doing. We made ourselves visible to the soldiers who were stationed hundreds of meters away. We remained still for around 10 minutes to make sure they knew we were there as journalists. When no warning shots were fired at us, we moved uphill towards the camps. Out of nowhere, we heard the first gunshot. Our colleague Ali al-Samudi was hit. Shireen shouted, standing right behind me as we both stood with our backs to a wall to take cover. Right then, another bullet pierced Shireen's neck, and she fell to the ground right next to me. I called her name, but she didn't move. When I tried to extend my arm to reach her, another bullet was fired, and I had to stay hiding behind a tree. Shireen's legacy will live forever. It lives in the countless students who have studied journalism aspiring to become like her, in the Palestinian school children who imitate her signature sign-off. And already, in the last 24 hours, 3 newborn girls in Palestine have been named Shireen. She was an inspiration to us all, and we demand justice for her.
Great to see so many people rallying at such a short notice. My name is Shahd Abu Salama, and I'm a Palestinian academic and an artist who was silenced, whose Israel tried to silence at the beginning of this year. But I'm standing here and I will continue speaking like Shireen did, as loud as ever, for Palestinian freedom, justice, equality, and return to our dispossessed lands. Shireen inspired generations, and I cannot forget how we as kids pretended to be her in our role plays. Killing Shireen is another way of trying to kill the truth of the Palestinians. And Israel would try to kill us and to silence the Palestinians by any means necessary, whether by means of demonization or detention, like what happened to Dareen Tatour and Khalida Jarrar, or by killing, as what happened to Shireen Abu Aqla. I know that the Palestinians and the Arab people more widely are mourning this devastating loss everywhere they are. The international community is responsible for Israel's culture of immunity that allows this terrorist state to dispossess our people of our ancestral lands, colonize us, push us under military siege, and occupation and other forms of imprisonment, silence us and kill us by whatever means necessary, even if we resist by telling the truth. The world needs to realize that accountability will never be served by Israel's apartheid settler colonial systems that are inherently discriminatory and dehumanizing to the Palestinians. We had enough counting and mourning Israeli crimes, and it is time to hold the perpetrator to account. If the world is angry about Russian actions in Ukraine, this anger must be multiplied 1,000 times when it comes to the Israeli oppression of the Palestinians who have been resisting the longest standing settler colonial occupation in modern history. We have to put an end to this international hypocrisy that only upholds international law when it's convenient to the West and its allies. Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine!
From the river to the sea!
Palestine will be free!
From the river to the sea!
Palestine will be free!
We owe it to Shireen and every victim of Israel's terror to keep telling the truth of our people until justice is served. Thank you.
Allow me now to do the Arabic chants. Now she's done the English chants. ويا بيا 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 وعلي الصوت شوية ويا بيا 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 وحمين الكف شوية وعلا يا بلادي علا الموت وانا لما زلا وعلا يا بلادي علا الموت وانا لما زلا وما خلقنا نعيش بذل خلقنا نعيش بحرية وحرية حرية وعلي 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 الصوت واللي بيهتف ما بيموت ويا دلال ويا دلال وحكام العرب انزل وحكام العرب انزل وعلا يا بلادي علا الموت وانا لما دلا الموت وانا لما دلا ومن الاقصى طلع القرار وبدنا نهد دول الجدار ويا بيا 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 وعلي الصوت شويه وفري فري 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 1 2 3 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Dear friends, قولوا الله قولوا الله. هاي شيرين مش حيلا من مخيم الصمود. من مخيم الصمود. هاي شيرين يا أسود. Thank you. Shukran. Thank you very much, dear friends, comrades, brothers and sisters. In the name of the Palestinian Forum in Britain, I offer you my condolences because you are the international family for Shireen. I also extend my condolences to her family and all the Palestinians in the occupied Palestine and everywhere in this world. أيها الإخوة والأخوات،
جئنا هنا اليوم ليس فقط للتعبير عن الغضب الممزوج بالحزن على الزميلة شيرين أبو عاقلة، وليس فقط لنضم أصواتنا للمطالبين بمعاقبة دولة الاحتلال وقادتها من مجرمي الحرب القتلة الإرهابيين، بل جئنا اليوم لنؤكد أننا جميعا شيرين أبو عاقلة، وسنبقى نلاحق العدو القاتل بقوة كلماتنا وكاميراتنا وأقلامنا وبقوة الحق الذي معنا وبكل أشكال المقاومة المشروعة لشعب تحت الاحتلال. وسنبقى على عهد الوفاء لشيرين ولفلسطين التي طالما حلمت شيرين بحريتها. وسنحمل أيها الإخوة والأخوات، سنحمل رسالة شيرين وحلم شيرين في تحرير الوطن والمقدسات. نعم، نحزن لاغتيال الزميلة شيرين أبو عاقلة، ولكن الجريمة البشعة ستزيدنا إصرارا وقوة، إصرارا على حمل رسالتها وتحديا لقاتلها وحرصا على أخذ حقها وحق كل الشهداء بإذن الله. سيبقى دم شيرين أبو عاقلة شاهدا على بشاعة الاحتلال وجيشه الإرهابي، ولعنة على كل المنسقين والمطبعين والخونة. وأقدم رسالة إلى شيرين، لك يا شيرين أقول: لن يذهب دمك هدرا يا شيرين، ولن نكتفي بتعليق شاشة من القماش تحمل قطرات من دمك على حائط منازلنا، وهذا شرف لمن يحظى به، بل سنجعله تذكارا حاضرا بأن القاتل لابد أن يدفع الثمن لجريمته، ولا بد أن يأخذ الشعب الفلسطيني بحقه من الاحتلال، وسيدفع القتلة ومجرمي الحرب الثمن غاليا طال الزمان أم قصر. وسيكون دمك يا شيرين ودماء الشهداء تذكارا يدفع كل فلسطيني وكل حر في العالم لأجل أن نجمع كل الجهود من أجل تحقيق حلمك يا شيرين وحلم الشهداء وحلمنا جميعا في الحرية لفلسطين، كل من موقعه وبطريقته. إنه العهد يا شهيدة الكلمة والحقيقة. And it is the time to bring the killers of the state of the Israel to justice court. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
السلام عليكم. أنا فادية لباني من مخيم برج البراجني بلبنان. سلام لروحك يا شيرين. شيرين يلي كنت عم تلبسي ولا كنت لابسه توب الصحافة، هذا كلياته ما وقف العدو انه يقتلك، لانه بيعرف انه العالم مش رح يحاسب. العالم ما بيشوف ولا بيسمع ولا بيقشع. قتلك لانك اخترتي الكلمة لتوصلي صوت شعبي لكل العالم. اخترت الكلمة لتكون مقاومتك. ومن هون من عاصمة لندن رح أقول لك نامي بسلام. أنت صوت الشعب والشعب ما بيموت.
Thank you to everyone who's spoken tonight, this evening, including those who weren't planning to, but felt compelled to do so. That's the power that Shireen had on all of our lives. People often refer to Palestinians as voiceless, but since yesterday, I've seen countless people refer to Shireen as the voice for Palestine. She was on the ground in Palestine and she used her voice to speak truth to power every single day. Palestinians are not voiceless. The fact that Shireen was murdered proves that there is no such thing as the voiceless, only the deliberately silenced. Whether they try and shoot us down through cold-blooded murder or through IHRA and anti-BDS legislation, we will never be silenced. We will continue resisting. And one way that you can all do that is by joining us at the demonstration on Saturday, where we'll be marching and protesting to commemorate 74 years of the Nakba and the ongoing nature of both the Nakba and of Palestinian resistance. We'll be meeting at Portland Place at midday, so I hope to see you all there. To conclude this evening's formalities, we invite you to come to the front and light a candle or lay a flower as other people have. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, everybody.
هاي شيرين ست الكل أيامك ما خلقنا لنعيش بذل خلقنا نعيش بحرية ما خلقنا لنعيش بذل بدنا نعيش بحرية ما خلقنا لنعيش بذل خلقنا نعيش بحرية ما خلقنا لنعيش بذل بدنا نعيش بحرية من المية للمية من المية للمية فلسطين عربية فلسطين عربية من المية للمية من المية للمية فلسطين عربية فلسطين عربية موت وتحيا فلسطين موت وتحيا فلسطين موت وتحيا فلسطين موت وتحيا فلسطين يا فلسطيني علي الصوت يا فلسطيني علي الصوت هاي بلدنا وما في سكوت هاي بلدنا وما في سكوت يا فلسطيني علي الصوت يا فلسطيني علي الصوت هاي بيوتنا وما في سكوت هاي بيوتنا وما في سكوت شكرا شكرا يا شيرين شكرا شكرا يا شيرين وتحية لفلسطين وتحية لفلسطين ويا شهيد ارتاح ارتاح يا شهيد ارتاح ارتاح واحنا نوصل للكفاح يا شهيد ارتاح ارتاح واحنا نواصل للكفاح واحنا نواصل للكفاح ومن حيفا حتى جنين ومن حيفا حتى جنين ومن القدس حتى جنين ومن القدس حتى جنين شاعب واحد ما بيلين شاعب واحد ما بيلين ودوار الزمن دوار دوار الزمن دوار كف بكف وايد بايد كف بكف وايد بايد عن حق شيرين ما منحيد عن حق شيرين ما منحيد وحرية حرية 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 لا شيرين حرية ولا شيرين حرية ولا جنين حرية ولا جنين حرية ولا فلسطين حرية ولا فلسطين حرية ويا جنين احنا جينا يا جنين احنا جينا ويا شيرين احنا جينا يا شيرين احنا جينا ويا شيخ جراح احنا جينا يا شيخ جراح احنا جينا ودم شيرين غالي علينا ودم شيرين غالي علينا علوا 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 الصوت علوا 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 الصوت واللي بيهتف ما بيموت واللي بيهتف ما بيموت ويا شيرين ما في سكوت يا شيرين ما في سكوت عن حقك ما في سكوت عن حقك ما في سكوت وعن دمك ما في سكوت وعن دمك ما في سكوت ومن القدس العقارات ومن القدس العقارات انتفاضة وانتصار انتفاضة وانتصار وما في خوف وما في خوف ما في خوف وما في خوف الحجر صار كلاشينكوف الحجر صار كلاشينكوف شيلوا العسكر عن الحدود شيلوا العسكر عن الحدود وعن الضفة الغربية وعن الضفة الغربية ولا شرقية ولا غربية لا شرقية ولا غربية هاي القدس عربية هاي القدس عربية يا شيرين انت الطلقة وانت الصوت يا شيرين انت الطلقة وانت الصوت يا شيرين انت الحداش الموت يا شيرين انت الحداش
نحن يعني ممكن نختلف مع ابو عمار بس بدنا نختلف عليه.
نقول لهم انه هذه رسالتنا اليوم في لندن هنا في هذا الجو فشل عدد كبير جدا عشرات بل مئات من الصحفيين العرب والمسلمين من جنسيات مختلفه.
الاسلام وكرمه الشعب الفلسطيني. نحن هنا اليوم جئنا لنقول ان دم الشهيدة لا تخاف، وايضا لنقول ان رسالة الشهيدة حاضرة ومستمرة ونحن مستمرين نشترط في ارضنا ان نقيم دولتنا على ارضنا كامله عاصمه القدس باذن الله. نحن نحزن لفراق شيرين، ولكن مقتل شيرين واستشهاد شيرين سيدفع الشعب
بالروح بالدم يبكيك يا شيرين.
انا اعرف ناس ترقص